live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra and Kumasi on Love 99.5 FM, myjoyonline.com. Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. And in the next 60 minutes here on Newsnight, it's official. John Mahama's journey to taking over the reins of government has begun today. He was back at the Jubilee House earlier today for an inaugural visit with President Akufo-Addo. Tonight, the team that will oversee the transition on both sides have been duly inaugurated. We'll hear from President Akufo-Addo, who says the country has returned to the pre-COVID era of growth, expressing confidence that the economy is back to what it was like in his first term.
You'll be happy to learn that the Minister of Finance has just informed me on my way here that the third quarter results of the economy has been established at a growth of 7.2%. We are indeed back to the pre-COVID era of growth in my first term.
But the president-elect appears to disagree, urging the joint transition team to work with a modest budget considering the current economic situation.
We call on the transition team to work expeditiously and within a modest budget, given the prevailing economic circumstances, even though Mr. President seems to strike a very upbeat tone on recent numbers.
Also tonight, no official vehicle shall be acquired by any appointee of the current administration as the term concludes. That's a caution from the presidency to all appointees. I have details of that caution statement also tonight.
The violence, President-elect John Dramani Mahama, call your boys to order.
Tonight, the NPP passionately appeals to President-elect John Mahama and the NDC to rein in supporters involved in post-election violence as they reveal that several of their candidates in disputed constituencies are living in fear, with some forced to flee their homes.
In Ablekumanov, the parliamentary candidate there is under siege. At Obuasi East, our candidate was asked to choose between his seat and his life. All of us are being threatened. They are using that to incite their party foot soldiers.
Also tonight, the NPP is urging the Electoral Commission to intervene in results declared in at least 13 constituencies as the party alleges some returning officers were forced into announcing outcomes against their will and in favor of opposing parties.
Akotia, Suhum, Fantia Kwanov, Insawa Aduaji, Techiman South, and Awin.
We call on the Electoral Commission to take immediate steps to reverse all these illegal declarations.
We'll get to hear from the Electoral Commission on this. Also, former President of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, is condemning political party supporters' rampant attack on state institutions and calls for a seizure or a ceasefire on this act.
In business, gold production and other mining activities pushed Ghana's growth for third quarter to 7.2%, the biggest expansion since 2019.
And in sports, Saudi Arabia officially confirmed as host nation of the men's 2034 FIFA World Cup amidst human rights controversies.
We have details of that and more, plus the latest arrests by the police. 4 individuals, we are told, arrested in connection with post-election looting, and more. Security analyst calls for swift prosecution of such individuals. That and more coming up here on Newsnight. You want to join us with your thoughts, your comments via WhatsApp is 055-1111-997. I am Emefa Apo. Details shortly. And we settle for details now. This is your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. A lot happening today in terms of the smooth transition for the next government, and also the president-elect John Dramani Mahama. Earlier today, he was back at the Jubilee House for that inaugural visit to President Akufo-Addo for initial meetings and security briefings. Later, and also just a while ago, that transition team on both sides were duly commissioned at the Accra International Conference Center for work to begin. And President Akufo-Addo, during his address, mentioned that we are back to the pre-COVID era of growth. Words of President Akufo-Addo as he expressed optimism about the economy's recovery while speaking at that inauguration of the joint transition team for 2024 at the Accra International Conference Center. He urged members from both sides to collaborate with transparency and mutual respect during this particular transitional period. The joint transition team, we know, is tasked among other responsibilities with ensuring a smooth transfer of power from the outgoing government to the incoming administration.
Of executive authority, ensuring the provision of daily national security briefings to the President-elect and ensuring the due discharge of the financial obligation of the state to Article 71 office holders. To execute these functions effectively, the Act makes provision at the instigation of the transition team for the formation of discretionary committees to address specific aspects of the transition process as it deems fit. It is obvious that the role of this team is not simply administrative. It is deeply patriotic. You are tasked with ensuring that the incoming administration receives all the resources, briefings, and support it needs to begin its work with the single objective of advancing the interests of the Ghanaian people. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is a reaffirmation of our shared commitment to the democratic principles that underpin our republic. This commitment is especially critical in the current context of West Africa, where the region faces threats from unconstitutional changes in government and the spread of terrorism and violent extremism. Ghana stands out as a beacon of democracy and stability, showcasing the strength of our institutions and the maturity of our people. It is imperative that we continue to consolidate this hard-earned reputation. By adhering strictly to the provisions of the Transition Act, we send a powerful message to the world that democracy thrives in Ghana, even in challenging times. As we embark on this transition, I urge all members of the team, both from the outgoing administration and the incoming one, to approach this task with a spirit of collaboration, transparency, and mutual respect. The people of Ghana are counting on us to prioritize their interests above all else. Let us not lose sight of our shared goal, safeguarding the freedom, peace, progress, and stability of our beloved nation. This transition is not an end, but a continuation of Ghana's democratic journey, which serves as a model for our region and beyond. I call on all Ghanaians to support this process with patience, understanding, and faith in the institutions that underpin our republic. The strength of our democracy lies not just in the conduct of elections, but also in the respect for the outcomes and the orderly handing over of power. Let us continue to build a nation that serves as an inspiration to others, a nation united in its diversity and freedom, and steadfast in its pursuit of progress. President-elect, Your Excellency, you'll be happy to learn that the Minister of Finance has just informed me on my way here that the third quarter results of the economy has been established at a growth of 7.2%, making an average rate of the growth of the first three quarters at 6.3%. We are indeed back to the pre-COVID era of growth in my first term. May God bless us all and our homeland Ghana.
That's the President Akufo-Addo there during the inauguration of the transition team for both sides, mentioning that we are back to the pre-COVID era when he took office in this first term. But of course, it does appear that the President-elect, John Dramani Mahama, disagrees. He actually called on the joint transition team to work swiftly and within a modest budget, given the current economic challenges. However, like I said, he appeared to disagree with the President's assertion that the economy had returned to pre-COVID levels of growth. Listen.
By the spirit behind the Presidential Transition Act to ensure a smooth and seamless transition. We may belong to different political parties, but we all belong to Ghana, and let the spirit of our nationalism and patriotism prevail. We call on the transition team to work expeditiously and within a modest budget, given the prevailing economic circumstances, even though Mr. President seems to strike a very upbeat tone on recent numbers. I'm sure the transition team would establish that. Mr. President, you can count on my respect and cooperation during and even after this transition. We must demonstrate to the world that despite the adversity we face, Ghana remains the beacon of democracy in Africa. Now more than ever, destiny requires us as countrymen and women to close our ranks and stand in solidarity with each other. And just a little slip, I omitted Dr. Edward Mahama, who was Minister of Communications in my government and has been the Director of Elections during the past election. And so we must put our country first, and the work would be onerous, but we expect that you're capable and you're going to put your shoulders to the wheel. Myself and Mr. President will be available in case you need to consult us on anything. Let the spirit of cooperation that has marked the post-election period continue to guide us even as we go through this phase. And so I want to thank you all.
That's President-elect John Dramani Mahama there at the inauguration of the transition team earlier today. My colleague Maxwell Agbagba is still at the Accra International Conference Centre. It does appear that the joint transition team, they've already started work. Maxwell, let's first talk about what the ceremony was like. Walk us through it.
Well, Anafa, the transition team members from the outgoing government and the incoming government were all present. Now seated on the dais, and from the incoming government were co-chairman of the transition team, Julius Deborah. We had Vice President-elect Professor Nana Jane Akufo-Addo also seated on the dais, and then President-elect John Mahama. Now, from the side of the outgoing government, seated on the dais, we had the Foreign Affairs Minister Shella Ayoko-Botwe, the Chief of Staff, and then President Akufo-Addo. Now, it happened in an atmosphere of cordiality, very different from all the jabs and criticisms that we witnessed, on the campaign trail. It was a very short ceremony, about 40 minutes, remarks by President Akufo-Addo and the President-elect, exchange of handing over notes, and then later there were photographs. But the joint team is still locked up in one of the committee rooms here. We're told that work has already started, and it doesn't look like they are going to end anytime soon, but we are hoping to hear and report what transpired, on the first day. So quite a number of journalists are still here waiting for the joint transition team to step out, so we know exactly what discussions took place, on the first day of work.
Previously, we had spokespersons for the transition team. Have we had any indication who and who speaks for both sides of the transition team just yet?
No, we do not have that indication yet. We're hoping that hopefully when they step out, that will be clarified, all that information will be given to us. But it stands now, we do not know who the spokespersons, are for the joint transition.
Well, President Akufo-Addo, during his speech, talked about Ghana's resilience and noting that even amid regional threats of coups and terrorism, the nation has actually demonstrated that democracy can thrive in difficult times. Tell us more. What exactly was he pointing to?
Well, he says Ghana is enjoying a thriving democracy in a turbulent region, largely because of the strength of our institutions, and the work of the committee is important in consolidating the gains that we have made so far. Now, he says the people of Ghana are counting on the members of the transition team to prioritize their interests above all others.
Well, since we are still monitoring the process there also, I'm sure we heard more from the President-elect John Dramani Mahama, even though he disagrees to a large extent that we are back to the pre-COVID-19 growth as recorded when President Akufo-Addo took over the reins of power.
Yes, he has also been touching on quite a number of things. He expressed excitement. He said he was happy about today's meeting earlier in the day at the Jubilee House. He said he was excited about the briefing that the president gave to him, and is hoping to receive more of those briefings. He said the two teams are going to work together in the interest of Ghana for a seamless transition, and everything, he says, will be done towards consolidating the democratic gains of the country.
To visit the office of the president to discuss preliminary issues before the inauguration of the transition team this morning. I also want to thank him for the early briefing he gave me on issues of critical national importance in respect of national security and the economy. I want to congratulate him on superintending over what has been a successful election, and to congratulate the Security Service, the Electoral Commission, and all those who helped to make this election successful. Our country has done it once again, despite the belief of naysayers, and I believe that Ghana will continue to get it right when it matters the most. Today we're here to inaugurate the Joint Transitional Team as required by law, and I wish to congratulate the members who have been selected or nominated to serve on this Joint Transitional Team. There is huge expectation that this transitional team will get its work right so that we have a seamless and smooth transition of power from one democratically elected government to another. Obviously, this is a fulfillment of the Presidential Transition Act, which was signed into law in 2012 by our late President of blessed memory, Professor John Evan Seton Mills. The law requests that we set up a joint transitional team in a cooperative spirit with mutual respect and openness to the approach of matters during the transition period. The purpose is to achieve a smooth and peaceful transfer of government administration, as I said, from one government to another. We pray that the members of the Joint Transitional Team will work within the confines of this law to fulfill the wishes of the Ghanaian people as expressed in the votes of 7th December 2024. In accordance with law, I have nominated members of my side of the Joint Transitional Team and nominated Honorable Julius Deborah, former Chief of Staff, to represent me as Joint Chair of the Transition Team. I've also nominated on the basis of experience and institutional memory several other people, including Johnson Asiedu Nketia, who is the chairman of our party, but also served as a long-standing member of parliament and also as Deputy Minister of Agriculture. Honorable Fifi Fiavikwete, who's General Secretary of our party and served as Minister of Transport and Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Calisius Mahama, who was head of the Ghana Local Government Service and also has been the administrator in my office these past 8 years. Professor Kwamna Ahoy, who is a doyen of local government, and if I want to talk about his credentials, we probably would not leave here today. And Mr. Akufo-Addo MP, who is our majority leader. In order not to stir controversy, maybe I'll say incoming. I don't know what position he will take, but Honorable Mahama MP, who also served as Minister of Youth and Sports and also as Minister of Environment, Science and Technology, and is the MP for Boko Central. Honorable Valerie Sawyer, who served as Deputy Chief of Staff and also served as Special Presidential Advisor on Policy. And Honorable Guzi Tano, who is a long-standing cadre, has been a member of the PNDC and is a very well-known intellectual and very seasoned politician and businessman.
Well, former Chief of Staff Julius Deborah, we know, has been named as co-chair of his team. You heard the President-elect talk about it. In his victory speech, the President-elect expressed his commitment to collaborating with President Akufo-Addo to ensure a seamless transition. We've been hearing that. But in the last few minutes also, we've been seeing a statement from the presidency signed by Eugene Ahin, Director of Communications for the Office of the President, cautioning appointees in the current administration as the term concludes on official vehicles and acquisition of same. They say no official vehicle shall be acquired by any appointee of the current administration. So that's a caution to all the appointees. My colleague James Aveji joins me in studio with a copy of that statement. What does it say, James?
The statement says the Office of the President reiterates the directive regarding the acquisition of official government vehicles by outgoing ministers, deputy ministers, regional ministers, and other political appointees at the end of the current administration's term of office. It says at the conclusion of the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's first term in 2020, a directive was issued prohibiting ministers, same list, deputy ministers, regional ministers, special assistants, special aides to the president and vice president, and all other political appointees under the Presidential Office Act 1993, Act 463, from acquiring government vehicles. This directive remains in full effect as we approach the end of the president's second and final term. It continues that while past administrations have adhered to a convention allowing appointees to acquire one official saloon vehicle through valuation by the State Transport Company Limited, President Akufo-Addo has reiterated that this practice will not be applicable under his administration. No official, and that is in bold letters, that no official vehicle shall be acquired by any appointee of the current administration as the term concludes. For clarity, all ministers of state, deputy ministers, regional ministers, and all of the lists they've mentioned earlier, and other political appointees, including those serving as chairpersons or members of statutory boards and corporations, are required to comply strictly with this directive, and all government vehicles in the possession of these appointees must be returned to the chief director of the relevant ministries no later than Friday, 3rd January 2025. And this directive underscores the President's commitment to accountability and the responsible management of state resources. The Office of the President anticipates the cooperation of all appointees in adhering to this important measure. And so by 3rd of January, all of the government appointees must return their vehicles.
Okay, so that's a statement from the presidency. No official vehicle shall be acquired by any appointee of the current administration as the term concludes. We know transition has also begun in earnest, and my colleague Maxwell Abugba is monitoring that proceeding or that meeting that is currently underway at the Accra International Conference. For us, as and when we get more from the transition team, we'll bring that to you. But tonight also, the New Patriotic Party has been holding a press conference, and they're appealing to President-elect John Dramani Mahama and the NDC to rein in supporters amid post-election violence. The unrest, which began Sunday, has seen state institutions attacked and looted with some bent. Well, the NPP alleges that the NDC members, supported by senior officials, have coerced Electoral Commission staff into declaring disputed results in at least 13 constituencies. Listen to Justin Frimpong-Kudia, the General Secretary of the NPP.
Our flag bearer, Dr. Alhaji Muhammadu Bamia, considered defeat, an occurrence never recorded in the 32 years of our democracy. Ordinarily, the concession speech by Dr. Alhaji Muhammadu Bamia and the NPP should have deflated all tensions pertaining to the elections. Leading members of the NDC captured and locked up the regional office of the EC, where coalition for several parliamentary elections was ongoing. They chased out state security personnel and brought in tax, and subsequently took over the coalition process for Kaikwe Central and Ablekumas North constituencies. Further, as is already known to the public, some of our parliamentary candidates and officials of the EC were either held at gunpoint or physically assaulted at various coalition centers by hoodlums of the NDC to force them to declare results in their favor in the following constituencies: Ablekuma North, Domeko Abenya, Okaikwe Central, Tema Central, Ahafano North, Obuasi East, Ahafano Southwest, Akotia, Suhum, Fantia Kwa North, Nsawa Aduaji, Techiman South, and Aowin.
So those are the 13 constituencies that the NPP is alleging that Electoral Commission staff were forced into declaring the disputed results in favour of the NDC. Well, my colleague Michael Papanieshale has just returned from that press conference, joins me in studio. They have a call on civil society as well and faith-based organisation. What exactly are they hoping?
Well, they are hoping that these individuals first will condemn the spate of violence that we have seen that has now possibly may mar the elections, and then also adding that John Dramani Mahama must join these groups to also call these people to order. We can listen to him.
So just as the majority leader said, we are equally calling on the National Peace Council, National House of Chiefs, Christian Council of Ghana, Catholic Bishops Conference, our National Chief Imam, organized labor, civil society organizations, the diplomatic community, to, as a matter of agency and for the sake of our cherished and enviable record as a country that has for over 32 years practiced multi-party democracy, to come out and condemn the lawlessness from the NDC.
Well, we've been hearing from the Catholic Bishops Conference, the National Peace Council, a number of civil society organizations, security experts, international organizations, all condemning the violent attacks and the looting that's been occurring. But we've been hearing from, should I say, the former majority leader, Alexander. Okay, so in the next parliament, he'll be the minority leader. That is if he stays there as a minority leader. But Alexander Fenyumakin was at the press conference also. He's been talking about this situation. They say some of their candidates are living in fear. More seriously, let's talk about it.
So he tells us that, for instance, Okankwe North, Okankwe Central, Domeko Abenya, and mentions some other places where he says that there have been reports, or these people have told him that some of them have had to leave their homes, to live elsewhere where they don't even want to disclose. And then some people, in some cases, they've been put at gunpoint to write declarations that they forfeit elections and all of that. We can listen to him tell us exactly how many people of them have been able to come forth with such reports.
In Ablekuma North, the parliamentary candidate there is under siege. All manner of persons were at her residence in search of pink sheets. The question is, why is the NDC so interested in destroying evidence? Why are they interested in capturing pink sheets to destroy them and set them ablaze? Honorable Patrick Boama is unable to sleep in his house because they are threatening him, thinking that he has a pink sheet at his residence. His constituency chairman is being looked for. Why should a member of parliament fear for his life? All of us are being threatened. They are using that to incite their party foot soldiers to attack MPP members, including my very self. When NDC was in opposition, of course, before the election, they were the ones who were all over fighting for the right of Ghanaians. Such attacks are planned and led by some MPs who are being promised juicy positions in government. And they are all over attacking parliamentary candidates. They are looking for pink sheets. At Obuasi East, our candidate was asked to choose between his seat and his life. He was locked up in his room at gunpoint and was forced to sign the final declaration, so-called declaration form. Why should such a thing happen? Honorable Ano Dompre is also under siege, where they know they have lost but prevented the coalition from happening.
So that's Alexander Afenyo marking there, Michael. Well, they have an intervention. They're also calling on the Electoral Commission to intervene and reverse the declarations in the disputed constituencies.
Yes, MFA. So what they are looking forward to is that possibly the entire process in itself should be exhausted. So possibly they should go back and finish those areas where they will know that coalition was not fully done. But we've also been hearing from the Electoral Commission, MFA, in terms of what they also see from their point of view should happen in this situation. So I have a statement here signed by the Deputy Chairperson Operations for the Electoral Commission, Samuel Titi, and it says that the Electoral Commission has taken note of misleading statements regarding its decision to temporarily halt the collation of results for the Ablekuma North constituency scheduled to take place in the Greater Accra Regional Office today. The Commission wishes the public to know that more than any institution, it would like to bring to an end all collation in outstanding constituencies. The Commission, however, believes that the collation should be done in accordance with the legal requirements as enshrined in CI 127, which requires every political party to be present to present 2 agents to the collation center and directs that collation be done by the returning officer and any other officer designated by the Electoral Commission. Contrary to legal requirement, what is currently transpiring is that political party supporters continue to besiege some collation centers, threaten and physically abuse our staff, and destroy property. Additionally, these supporters order our staff under duress to declare results which are not reflective or reflected on the pink sheets. It goes on and on. I'm sure in subsequent conversations we can bring up the full thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's Michael Ashali with details of that statement from the Electoral Commission and also that earlier press conference held by the NPP addressed by Alexander Afenyo and of course the General Secretary of the party, Justin Frimpong Kodia. Thankfully, we've been joined on the phone by the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande. We're grateful for your time here on Newsnight. So a quick comment on the NPP's concerns. They've mentioned that about 13 constituencies, it does appear that your supporters or some of your executives forced the hands of Electoral Commission staff to actually declare the results in your favor. They've been mentioning a number of them. How do you respond to that?
It's a lazy exercise, lousy, misplaced, and the Ghanaians should discredit this entire waste of our time. Afenyo Markins mentioned Obuasi East. Disingenuously, I was at Obuasi East. There were armed police presence, including some other state security individuals. When I sat with the MP, the national organizer, and then the NDC candidate, we sat in the same coalition room. When the MP moved and signed and accepted a defeat, who held who at a gunpoint? Number 2, he talked about Nsawam Adrajiri. I was monitoring Nsawam Adrajiri election when Anodompre gave his Land Cruisers, 4 of them, fully loaded with military officers holding weapons. I stopped them. I have videos to what I'm saying. Anodompre himself pulled a pistol and fired a gun in Nsawam Adrajiri.
And you have videos of that as well.
I'm telling you. I'm saying that. So if this
and you're willing to share, that with us.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. I'm saying that if these caliber of people reconvene and begin their life, they are calling on the very people who got them out of power. The very people they are calling on are the very people who ganged up and said their government was a criminal one and got them out of power.
But let me cite one incident to you as well. That's the Ablekuma North. And this collation was done at the Greater Accra EC offices. And as we speak, at least our reporters were on the ground. They were there and saw it happen or all unfold. It does appear that the EC official that declared this result did not even give figures. All he did was to declare that result under duress, we are told.
MFA, we've had a situation where the NDC is still living with the bruises of 2020 election, where people were killed in Techibansab in a collation center. This year, we've had a situation where avoidably, the government of the day deployed the military into coalitions, so the NDC will have no choice than to adequately prepare. And our preparation was to ensure that we had our people to witness, Ghanaians to witness how their vote.
And that preparation includes forcing the EC officials to declare results
I don't
without
know what
figures.
By forcing, because no electoral commissioner officer has come out to say that he or she has been forced. Have they also told you that in Tepa? The electoral commission.
You are not speaking to the Ablekuma North. I'm sticking to Ablekuma North because I have videos as well and footages to back what I'm saying. I'm saying that what does your briefing tell you? Do you have figures for Ablekuma North? By what figures did you win?
As far as I'm concerned, party people in Ablekuma West,
Ablekuma North,
were at the coalition center. I believe MPP supporters were there as well. EC officials were there, police officials were there to police the process. The candidate, I'm told, was there. The NDC candidate, I'm told, was also there. They collated results and same was declared. Any adverse findings or opinion on these declarations will be something that can be looked at. But as far as I'm concerned, the briefing I had was that everybody was present while the declaration was being done. And I wanted to add that, you see, did they also tell you that in Tepa, the EC commissioner there left her phone? And then only for Ghanaians to find out that she was corresponding with one candidate in whom she was assured that military deployments was going to happen. And true to it, they deployed military to the place which agitated the youth in that constituency. So you see, a litany of activities lead to what we are seeing, including mistrust within the Electoral Commission and the undue delay that they have created during coalition. And that is what is creating the problem.
Okay.
And so when come again.
So I'm just to wrap up the conversation and to let you off. Yesterday you made a call on your supporters at least to withdraw from coalition centers, also asking the police to arrest any supporter that engages in criminal acts. For instance, today, what has generally been the reports that you're gathering from the ground? Have they actually retreated? Do we have a calm situation? We know that the police has arrested about 4 persons today, amongst others. What exactly is the report you're getting on the ground? Your supporters are heeding your call?
Basically, we have been working with national security and working with all other individuals to ensure that calm returns to work.
Okay.
And at the same time, we have arrested a number of MPP people stealing from fertilizers to drip machines to NADMO, relief items, Agenda 111 building materials, and this evening, just in Second D, they have arrested MPP people fully loaded with trucks stealing YEA materials outside. Just as I indicated to you, we've issued an instruction to our rank and file that anybody you find stealing public property, get the police to arrest the person, retrieve him for further investigation.
Okay.
And that if you find out that an officer of MPP serving under government is using any government property, let the person continue to use same because government is still in section. But we then think that President Akufo-Addo must demonstrate responsibility and call the looting within his government to cease, because if it doesn't cease, Ghanaians will not look on for the stealing to continue.
Okay, we are grateful. That's the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande there, and he's been making reference to that Agenda 111, a building material stealing at Ewutu Breku in the central region. Well, the police has in a fresh operation also arrested 4 more individuals in connection with this particular Agenda 111 building material stealing. So the police are on top of the situation, and they say efforts are also underway to get the said contractor arrested to face justice. Well, suspects arrested so far in connection with this post-election disturbances as we speak comes up to 110. Yesterday we're at 80. Now it's 110. And of course, if you're engaged in any such acts, beware, because the police says they will definitely come after you. Now let's do business. George is here with the very latest. George, what do we have?
Well, coming up, gold production and other mining activities pushed Ghana's growth for the third quarter of this year to 7.2%. 2%, the biggest expansion since 2019. And IMF expresses concerns about future of Ghana's program and implementation of the needed reforms. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, Synthesis Tanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal. You welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, significant growth in activities in industry sector pushed the GDP estimates to new levels. The Ghana Statistical Service puts the third quarter growth rate at 7.2%. There is more in this report.
This is the highest growth the country has recorded since the third quarter of 2019. The growth, according to the Ghana Statistical Service, was fueled by some significant activities in the industry sector from July to September this year. One can talk about how mining and quarrying played a significant role with some significant expansion. The data showed that the sector grew by 10.4% during the third quarter of this year. It was followed by the services sector, which posted 6.4%. Agric, on the other hand, recorded 3.2%. This is the lowest growth that the agri sector has recorded since the last quarter of 2022. In terms of the share of the economy, that is what each sector commanded, services accounted for 43%, followed by industry with 32.6%, and agri had 24.5%. The data also showed that the agri sector, despite growth, was not doing that well, as some of the subsectors recorded negative growth. The 7.2% growth recorded for the third quarter of this year means that, in monetary terms, 270 billion cedis was added to the economy from July to September this year.
And that is the Business Desk report. Now, meanwhile, the Ghana Statistical Service is making a case for some strong growth for Ghanaians to feel the impact of this expansion. Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim urged government to be heavy on improving those critical indicators.
As I indicated, this is very much related to the question on the implications of the 7.2 on the ordinary person in Ghana. The communication around economic indicators and how it impacts day-to-day activities should always be underscored by a sustained change in economic indicators. It would always be erroneous if we take a one-off jump or slow down in an economic indicator to say that we want to see an immediate impact on the lives, on the day-to-day activities. So this growth rate that we are seeing, its impact on day-to-day activities in terms of how earnings would go up, how employment will change and all that, will be better felt if this 7.2% is sustained over a longer period of time.
And that is government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim. Let's still stay on the economy, because economist Professor Lord Mensah have a worry that this growth is not inclusive and can be described as jobless expansion.
We need a growth that is inclusive. We need a growth that will make life easier for the ordinary Ghanaian. So, for instance, if the growth was to be driven by agriculture sector, then it is expected that food prices will obviously, come down. But if you are having a growth that is mainly driven by mining, you ask yourself how many people can be employed in the mining sector. It is a jobless growth because it is being driven mainly by the services sector. And the services sector, it's not everybody that can, be part of the service sector. The industry and then, manufacturing driving the growth is what we are looking for. So, and, what we're seeing now is not the type of growth that will enhance job creation.
And that is economist Professor Lord Mensah. Now, the IMF is worried about the future of Ghana's program and the continuous implementation of the needed reforms for the economy. Now, this was captured in the latest report about the program performance. There is more in this report.
The concerns by the IMF, which is captured in this report, is based on some proposals made by some political parties before the December 7th election, which includes the National Democratic Congress, which has been elected to form the next government. The fund is worried about how some of these promises that have been made can be factored into Ghana's program. The fund is also worried that some of these proposals that has come up could be seen as a risk to Ghana's program with the IMF. President-elect John Mahama has already indicated that he will take steps to renegotiate the program, which is expected to end in 2026. The IMF has also highlighted deterioration of the external environment as another major risk to the program going forward. The report also revealed that the full impact of the recent dry spell that hit the economy is yet to be fully felt. A development that is not good for the economy, especially when inflation rate has hit 23% in November this year.
And that is a Business Desk report. Now, money transfer giant TapTapSend has maintained that it has taken measures to avoid future regulatory sanctions. Now, the money transfer giant was earlier this year suspended by the Bank of Ghana over breach of remittance regulations. However, this ban was lifted on December 4, 2024. Dara Akufo-Addo is head of TapTapSend for Africa.
It's the concerns, right? Because as you know, Bank of Ghana won't let us back if we hadn't fixed the concerns, right? So we engaged with Bank of Ghana. They opened their doors. They heard us. They listened to us, and we reaffirmed our commitment to compliance and to working with other regulations in the land. So we have definitely fixed them, and going forward, we would continue to make sure we continue to comply, and we are firmly committed to.
How do you see this industry? I mean, you've actually revolutionized the space. All my families outside use it.
Yeah.
And how do you see this industry? How do you see the growth of this industry when it comes to TapTapSend and being the preferred platform for everyone?
Yeah, I think the industry has changed a lot thanks to digital services like ourselves. So I think it would continue to evolve, and it will continue to be big, and companies like TapTapSend will continue to increase, and companies like Western Union probably would have to learn how to be more digital in this space. But that comes with a lot more regulatory stringent checks that we have to accept. That is a new way of doing business, and the regulators.
Dara Akufo-Addo is head of the money transfer giant TapTapSend, covering their Africa operations. And that's all for business on Newsnight. It's time for sports.
Yeah. It's time for sports, George. And in sports, big news coming in from FIFA is that the 2034 World Cup has now officially been handed to Saudi Arabia, and this is despite the concerns, human rights concerns that have been raised by bodies including Amnesty International. Now, the extraordinary FIFA Congress meeting, which was held earlier today, confirmed Morocco, Spain and Portugal as co-host of the 2030 World Cup. The decision was announced by FIFA President Gianni Infantino. Now, the 2030 and 2034 World Cups each had only single bid, and both were confirmed by acclamation. Now, Saudi Arabia will become the second Middle Eastern nation to host the tournament after Qatar staged it in 2022. Now, the 2034 edition will stage the first ever 48-team tournament in a single host country. Here is FIFA President Gianni Infantino following the draw.
Football is a social phenomenon. A unique social phenomenon which is capable of bringing people from everywhere, from all corners of the world, from all social classes, from south, north, east or west, bringing people together in a peaceful, joyful and respectful way. This is unity, and this is football.
Well, Amnesty International have raised concerns about their decision to hand that World Cup hosting right to Saudi Arabia and describing it as a dangerous move by FIFA. Here is their labor relations manager, Steve Cockburn.
FIFA has human rights requirements that it's part of its bidding process, which means that anyone who wants to host the World Cup should meet minimum labor standards, standards on freedom of expression, and to make sure that people are protected when the tournament's happening. We've done a lot of work on Saudi Arabia over many years, and it's clear that there are, this is a very dangerous decision for FIFA, and there are huge risks to migrant workers, hundreds of thousands of whom will be involved in the tournament. And we know that in Saudi Arabia, anyone who wants to speak out, even peacefully, will find themselves in prison. So it's an extremely dangerous decision.
Steve Cockburn with Amnesty International. Well, MFA, just finally, Kwame Poku has returned to Kumasi Asante Kotoko after some 3 years away from the club. He was part of the team's successful spell in the 2020-21 season, where he scored 6 goals and provided 3 assists in just 16 appearances. Well, after a stint in Saudi Arabia and in Morocco, he returns to the Porcupine Warriors, hoping to help them end the season on a high note. That's all for sports.
Lovely petticoat you have there.
Thank you.
Well, you should watch him on the news at 7 to get all that I'm seeing in the studios. But let me take you back to the Accra International Conference Center. And it does appear that the transition team, for both the Joint Transition Team 2024, they've just concluded work for day 1. And like I said, Maxwell Agbegba has been monitoring events there for us, joins us on the line. Maxwell, so you've been getting some details as to who actually is the spokesperson for the incoming government side of the transition team. Tell us more.
Yes, so we have confirmation for the incoming government side, like you rightly mentioned, and that is Felix Kwakye-Ofosu. So Felix Kwakye-Ofosu is the spokesperson for the incoming government side of the transition, and he has been providing details of what happened on the first day of work. Now, he told us that the incoming government side raised serious objections about some last-minute recruitment and a last-minute attempt, he says, to pay 240 million cedis to a company that did business with the Electricity Company of Ghana. He says that through the discussions that they had today, they raised serious objections about that payment, and they told the government side to hold on with the payment so they can further discuss that. So they've agreed that on the next meeting of the Joint Transition Team, they will discuss thoroughly that matter of the 240 million Ghana cedis to a company that did business with the Electricity Company of Ghana. He also mentioned that they've established some committees. He mentioned the inauguration committee and the government machinery committee that he says will streamline the transition process. He says the inauguration committee is particularly important because
unfortunately, I've just lost my colleague Maxwell Agbagba there on the line from the Accra International Conference Center. But we can hear excerpts of that interaction between himself and Felix Kwakye-Ofosu.
Basically, the president and the president-elect inaugurated the Joint Transition Team so that they could carry on with their mandate. Subsequent to that, the first meeting of the transition team was held. It was a very cordial affair. In accordance with the Transition Act, various subcommittees were formed to carry on with the work of the transition. The first was the Committee on Inauguration, which is a very important plank of the work of the transition team. There has to be an inauguration on the 7th of January 2025, and for that matter, a team has to be put in place to plan it. Another subcommittee was formed to take care of government machinery because there's a lot that has to be taken into account. There's a lot of handing over that must be done, and a committee was set up to ensure that this is done. Another subcommittee was set up to look at matters relating to the presidency. So all these 3 committees are in place as we speak, and they are scheduled to begin work immediately. Other matters came up for discussion. The ground rules were set, and it was made clear that the various committees would work with some urgency to ensure that this transition is speedy but thorough, and that all important matters are addressed and all important issues are traversed. There were a few issues that came up that generated some discussion. Amongst them was the worrying issue of last-minute recruitments and payments. I'm sure you have heard of various last-minute, rather irregular recruitments in some ministries, departments, and agencies, Bank of Ghana, GRA, the Ministry of Interior, and what have you. We need to place on record that these recruitments, especially regarding the time that they are being made, would have severe fiscal implications for the incoming government. They amount to imposing personnel on the incoming government. And the NDC side of the transition team made it clear that we thought that a broader consultation ought to be had on this, especially because it is the incoming government that will bear responsibility, first of all, for finding money and paying these people, and also working with them. And therefore, it is proper that the incoming government is fully apprised of what is happening, and that these recruitments are not done on the blind side of the incoming government. For instance, we have picked up information. Indeed, we've seen documentation relating to efforts to pay over 240 million Ghana cedis to an entity that is supposed to have done some business with the Electricity Company of Ghana. Now, if this was being paid to IPPs so that they could keep the power on, one perhaps would not have any issue. But it is being paid to an entity whose work, in my view, is not as critical as IPPs. Now, this sort of payment is quite huge and would affect the public purse in a manner that could be detrimental if not regularly done. So the NDC side of the transition team requested that this payment be put on hold pending further scrutiny and discussion to ascertain, first of all, the basis for the payments and whether or not it is even proper to make such a payment. I think that good governance requires that the incoming government is given the opportunity to make these decisions.
That's Felix Kwachiofosu, the spokesperson for the NDC side of the transition team. They're interacting with the media on some concerns they're raising about some payments that's to be made by the ECG, 240 million Ghana cedis. They've put on hold. They've asked that they take a look at it again and subcommittees will be put together. We're following everything that the transition team will do and bring details to you. But just before we go, the Ghana Fact-Checking Coalition is raising concerns over the rising use of social media channels in disseminating false information during and after the 2024 polls. In the just ended elections, it found that 85.3% of false information was disseminated through X, formerly Twitter, and compared the television networks that recorded 8.8%, followed closely by news websites with 4.4%. You can hear from the project manager for Ghana Fact-Checking, Dubawa, and Roslyn Ahiable.
For the disinformation narratives, 85.3% of the sources of disinformation we monitored happened on social media. Social media platforms were the main spaces where disinformation of Ghana's 2024 elections happened. This raises pertinent questions about content moderation and or social media regulation. TV stations followed with 8.8%, news websites 4.4%, and radio 1.5%.
And that's how we end today's edition of News Night here on Joy 99.7 FM. I'll leave you in the hands of Prince David Osei, his justification for the attacks on his social media platform. Since we are talking about social media, he tells us on Hits FM that he left his phone with his cousins who posted the things that she saw. I am MFA Pau. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. Have a good evening.
I think if you go on my page after the election, obviously, we were all pained and so sort of depressed because we were surprised at the outcome. But all the same, I came out to congratulate the NDC and President-elect. I even posted him and I said, the elections are over. We should all learn to live in peace. Then I started getting a lot of attacks on Twitter. So I even left the phone. I wasn't by my phone. I dropped the phone. Normally, when they start bullying and doing those stuff, I just leave the phone to my cousins or some of my friends. So I woke up and I saw this news that Prince David Osei insults the president-elect. Then I said, I was even sleeping. So I went on my Twitter feed to check where that was coming from. I noticed there was nothing like that. But I saw people tagging me from my page, like something written by me on my page. Then I said, no, I didn't write this. So I started asking my cousins and friends Then they said, people were annoying them, so they were replying them. Then I said, did anybody type any of this thing? Then they said no. But I could see people sharing it on Facebook from Prince David Osei's Twitter feed. Then I said, is quite unfortunate. So I came out because it was coming from my page. I came out to apologize, and I said I was sorry because people were calling my phone consistently. And when I pick Abua Ibeku jail, I was like, what's going on? What I tweeted was congratulatory messages. Then I congratulated the president-elect.